Okay, everybody, so welcome to Navigating Resume Formats. This is a new workshop, so we would love your feedback on it. There will be another poll at the end for feedback, just so you know. But like I said, this is a brand new workshop. It's the first time we're doing it, so I would love your feedback on it. My name is Keelan. I am a career coach and also an event coordinator at Devon, which is why I'm so interested in learning about what types of events all of you would like to see. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. And I'll pass it off to our wonderful moderator, Katarina.
Thank you, Keelan. Hi, everyone. My name is Katarina. I'm HR manager and career coach. I've been working as an HR for like 5 years, and I also have experience, like supporting, helping clients, international students with resume, like job search and stuff like that. I'm happy to be here today. I'm an international student. So I understand like the journey that international students have to go through. So I'm here, like to support you, and also I hope that we can answer some great questions today.
Thanks, Katarina. Yes, I always love facilitating with Katarina because she has that HR manager perspective. She's the one who looks at resumes when people apply to her company. She does the interviews, she does all of that. So it's really nice to have her perspective on things.
Thank you.
All right, so if this is your first Devon workshop, or if you're unfamiliar with us, it is our goal to help students and graduates to get hired in Canada. To date, we've helped over 25,000 job seekers in Canada, all across the country. We have hosted over 500 events, just like this one, since 2019 when we started doing events. And we have over 30 Canadian employers with active job opportunities. It's a good network to be a part of. Just some housekeeping before we get started. This is an interactive workshop. It helps Katarina and me when you use the chat box, when you use the Q&A function. Everybody automatically has their microphones muted, but if you do have a question or you want to explain something and it's easier to just say it out loud, you can raise your Zoom hand or request to unmute your microphone, and we can unmute that for you so you can speak out loud. There is a section at the end of the workshop for questions, and I'm sure we'll have tons of time for questions. So if you do want to do that, you will have time at the end, but please feel free to pop questions in the chat or in the Q&A box as we're going through. Katarina will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A box, so if any questions come through, she will pass them over to me. And this session is being recorded. It will be shared out by email to all of you afterwards. If you want to rewatch something or if you have to leave early, the recording will be sent to you usually tomorrow afternoon-ish. You will get it. It's just a link to a YouTube video of this workshop. And of course, a reminder of our future events. We host events every single Wednesday, and all of them are listed under the events tab on the Devon website, but I will talk about our future events at the end. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So of course, tonight's workshop is about navigating different resume formats. So first, we're going to talk about just basically the different resume formats, what they are, the pros and cons of each one, who should use them, which one you should use at different stages of your career, all of that stuff. We're then going to play a little bit of a game. So after all of you are experts in different resume formats, I'm going to give you example situations of people. I'll explain a little bit about their career path and what they're looking for. And you guys can tell us in the chat which type of resume you think they should use. We're then going to hop over to the Devon portal just as a refresher on Devon's resume tools. If you haven't used them before, I will show you how, because they do let you choose your resume format. So after this, you will know which format to choose. And then, of course, at the end, we will probably have lots and lots of time for questions. But if you do have a burning question, like I said, pop it in the chat while I'm talking. I'm happy to answer questions and be interrupted with questions as we go through. All right. So let's dive into understanding the different types of resume formats. So when we talk about different types of resume formats, we usually are talking about three main types. We have chronological. This is your most traditional resume format. This is usually what people think of when they think of a traditional resume. We then have something called a functional resume, sometimes also called a skills-based resume. And then we have the third most common type, which is a combination, also called a hybrid resume, which is just like it sounds. It's a combination of the chronological resume and the functional resume. Okay, so let's dive into each of those. Starting, of course, with chronological. We do have an example chronological resume on the side here. Don't worry if it's a little bit small. I know it's probably difficult to read. I have a slide and a couple of slides that expands it so you can read it a little bit better. So first of all, chronological resumes. Again, most traditional type of resume, this is probably what you think of when you think of a resume. It prioritizes your relevant professional experience and your achievements. It lists your work experience in reverse chronological order. So it starts with the most recent at the top and then goes backwards. And it includes brief job descriptions and duties for each position, usually about 3 to 5 bullets per role. Because in a chronological resume, that work experience section is taking up the majority of the space, you do have more room for more bullets per position. Whereas in different resume formats, you might include fewer bullets, maybe like 2 to 3 bullets per position, okay? And then you can see it also includes the education experience section, usually at the bottom, because again, with chronological resumes, we're typically prioritizing your work experience. So the work experience goes first, and then the education experience at the bottom. The type of person that should be using a chronological resume generally is somebody who has several years of experience in the same field or industry and is looking for a job in that same industry. So you can see in the example here, we have Jane Doe, who has been working in the customer service industry since 2020. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Communication, and she is looking for a job in the same field. So she's been in customer service for about 5 years, and she's looking for a customer service role. So for Jane, it makes a lot of sense that she's a chronological resume, and just fill it up with all of her relevant customer service experience. So then when a hiring manager or a recruiter looks at her resume, it's going to be very clear that she has the experience and she's a great fit for the role. Okay. Chronological resumes are also very good if you have minimal or no gaps in your employment history. So you can see, if I go over here to the example, you can see that dates are listed. So if Jane took a significant amount of time off work, a chronological resume would highlight that gap because, for example, it would say March 2020 to April 2022. And let's say that was her most recent job and this top one wasn't here, it would immediately become very obvious to the person reading it that she hasn't worked since 2022. So pretty good if you have minimal or no gaps in your employment history, just because if you do have a large gap, a chronological resume is going to highlight that gap more than other formats. I will say, if you do have a gap in your resume, a lot of you probably will because you're students, and a lot of people have that gap when you are studying. Totally okay. It makes sense. We'll talk about the different resume formats, but if you do have a gap, I know it's a concern for a lot of people. And I also will say that these days, with layoffs happening, with the pandemic, gaps in your work history are not as big of a red flag as they used to be. Employers are becoming much, much more understanding of gaps. So if you think a chronological resume is a great fit for you, you have lots of experience in the field, you're looking for a job in the same field, but you have a work gap, it still could be a good fit for you because it's not the deal breaker that it used to be. Do you agree, Katarina?
Sorry, yes, absolutely. Like I just have to say it's not a big deal right now if we see a gap in the resume. We'll have that conversation sometimes with the candidate just to kind of like get to know them a little bit better, because sometimes people like do some side jobs or like they volunteer and they don't include that in the resume, and some of those skills might be transferable. So absolutely, but like it's not a red flag, like literally just like you said.
Perfect. Thank you for the validation. I'm sure it's good for a lot of people to hear because, like I said, a lot of Devon clients come to us saying they have a gap in their resume and they're worried about it. So if you think chronological is the best format for you, but you have a gap, don't worry. I would still recommend using it if you think that it's the best fit. Okay, so here is Jane's resume expanded a little bit. I hope you can read it a little bit better. So as I said, Jane's worked in the customer service industry for 4 years. She's looking for a job in the same industry. So this makes a chronological format a great choice for her. If she was looking for a job in a different industry, this would not be the best fit. Let's say Jane wanted to get into finance. Using this resume would not be great because this resume talks about how great she is in customer service. It has nothing to do with finance. So not a great choice if you're looking to make a career change. Again, no significant gaps in work history, but that's not a huge deal. Again, work experience in reverse chronological order. You can see that the top job here is her current job, and then the one before that, and the one before that. And relevant job duties and accomplishments for each role. She's got 4 bullet points, 4 bullet points, and 3 bullet points. Makes a lot of sense that for more recent jobs, you have more bullet points, and for jobs in your past, you have fewer bullet points. And I just want to draw attention quickly to the summary as well. I believe in all of the resume examples in these slides, there is a summary section. I love a summary section. I think it's great. I think it's a really good way to tell a story, to make you seem more like a human being instead of just a piece of paper or instead of just a PDF on a screen. It allows you to tell your story. Also, going back to a gap, if you do have a gap, the summary is a great place to address that gap if you're that worried about it. So when we do send you the recording, I would recommend pausing it here and taking a closer look at the summary, reading the summary section, and also reading the bullet points as well. We talk more about this in our resume workshop that is actually happening in 2 weeks from now. But you can see that Jane's resume bullets are accomplishments versus tasks. That's a huge mistake that people make in their resumes. If you have questions about that, we can talk about it towards the end when we have that Q&A session. But your resume should not be just a task list. You should not just be stating the tasks that you do every day in the workplace. You should be focusing more on overarching accomplishments. So again, when you receive this recording, I would recommend pausing here, reading through that summary and reading through those accomplishment statements. All right. Katarina, do you have anything to add about a summary? I think you like a summary on a resume too, yes?
I do, yes. I nowadays objectives, right? Like it's not very popular to put an objective, but summary, very like short one. It's amazing because tells me actually a little bit about the candidate. And if they kind of like put the most kind of like important skills in there, it's even better because yeah, like you learn a little bit about the applicant.
Yeah, absolutely. And you read a resume from the top down, right? So if the summary is probably the first thing you're going to look at and it like grabs your attention and makes you want to keep reading.
Exactly. And I know that people like every time when we do like facilitate a workshop, we always say that recruiters spend like 5 to 8 seconds, most like 10 or 12 seconds like on a resume. And usually when we look like we'll look like at the summary and after we just like quickly skim through the experience. So we like check the job description, sorry, like the job title, and then we'll like the first bullet point. And like we're always looking for keywords. And that's something that maybe we can talk after. But like that is like the most important thing, summary and then job title and like some like major keywords.
Perfect. I love that. Real insights into how a real hiring manager reads a resume. So summary is super important. Job titles are important. And again, like I said, reading from the top down. So Katarina just mentioned that sometimes you're only going to read the first bullet point or the first couple bullet points. So make sure that the order of your bullet points for each position is strategic as well. Put the most relevant ones towards the top because like your 4th or 5th bullet point might not be read.
And sorry, like one more thing, I know that I mentioned keywords. Absolutely check the job description. I think this is a good time to mention this now. Check the job descriptions, like see the keywords that they're mentioning there, and please include them in the resume. For example, if like this example here, this candidate is customer service representative and has experience in that, and if this person is applying for like the same role, just like look what is in the job description. If you have those skills, just add them in here. So if it's delivering, maybe like organizing events, or like answering phone calls, or like responsible for like, picking up the mail, make sure that like you have those words, because the hiring manager and the recruiter, they both create that job description, so they put the keywords in there. So probably like they're looking for those keywords.
Awesome. Thank you, Katarina. All right, that is the last on chronological resumes before we move to functional or skills-based resumes. Do we have any questions about chronological resumes before we move on? Pop them in the chat or in the Q&A box. I'll give you a couple seconds because I know it takes some time to type. I wish Zoom told me if people were typing, so I knew if I should wait or keep going. All right, I will keep going, but if there's a question, Katarina, can you please let me know? Awesome. Okay, so we've covered chronological. Again, that's probably the most common, probably what you think of when you think of a resume. Let's move on to functional resumes, also sometimes called skills-based resumes, because that is exactly what they are. Functional resumes are kind of the opposite of chronological. So whereas chronological resumes focus mainly on your work experience, functional or skills-based resumes focus mainly on your skills and your abilities rather than your employment progression. They also very typically group skills under skill categories. So it's not just like a big list of skills. The skills are broken up into skill categories with bullet points under them. And typically on like a true functional or skills-based resume, if you do include employment, you don't include any specific dates. You just include the job title and some accomplishments or skills that you achieved there. Generally best if you are changing careers. So again, if we think about a chronological resume, it just focuses on your work history. So if you're making a career change, like I was saying, Jane's resume was all customer service based. If she was making a career change into finance, she would probably want to use either a functional or a combination resume, because a chronological customer service based resume is not going to say anything about how she has the skills for a financial job. Also very good if you are re-entering the workforce, if you have a lot of gaps in your employment, if you haven't worked in years. For example, like a lot of people who take time off to take care of their children and are coming back might want to use a functional or skills-based resume. If you are a student or a recent graduate with absolutely no work experience to list on your resume, like you've never had a job before, you've never had a volunteer role before, you don't have anything to put in a work experience section, then a functional resume would work. Also very good if you have gained skills in ways other than professional jobs, so such as through school or through a course that you took. This is because you can see in the example in the skills section, when they're listing the skills, it doesn't say where they gained those skills, it just says that they have those skills. So we don't know if they gained these skills through school, through work, through volunteering, and it doesn't really matter as long as they have the skill and it's on the resume. So let's take a closer look at this one. Let's zoom in a bit. We've got Mateo, who is a computer science professional. So he's got a skills section. He's got programming languages, software development, database management, and other technical tools. In this example, Mateo is a recent graduate, so he has no formal work experience in the field. However, in school, he has gained all of these skills, and a functional or skills-based resume gives him a place to put all of these skills. You can also see that he's used a project section to replace the work history section. So these are projects that he completed in school. He made an e-commerce website, and he also made a data analysis tool. So he's included a project section in place of his work experience section. And again, you can see this whole resume focuses much more on skills and abilities rather than employment experience. And it's not just a huge list of skills, they're grouped into specific skill categories. I do want to preface that I know a lot of hiring managers, a lot of HR managers, a lot of recruiters are not huge fans of skills-based or functional resumes. Katarina, you're nodding. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, to some extent, for sure. It's just like I feel it doesn't tell us a lot. Yes, like you're focusing on your skills, but somehow it looks like people are hiding something. And that might not be the case, but that's how it looks like. And maybe it is because we are so used to chronological resumes. But yeah, it's sometimes you're like, okay, like this person has the skills, but where does he like or she work, right? What
Right.
they did, like what company they worked for. So you want to have that like information.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I'm sure, like you were saying before, like if you receive a really good candidate with a skills-based resume, you're probably going to call them and ask them those questions on the phone, right? Like, where are
Yes.
you working? Where was your past job? Because, like you said, you kind of feel like they're hiding something.
Yeah, like yeah, right? Like, but probably it's like some people might be like, yes, like I think skills are the most important thing, and I want to showcase that on the resume. But for us, it's like, yeah, like, but what company? Where did you work for? You know, like what happened? Why you're not mentioning the company? So there are like a lot of things that just like come up. So, but I think like if like you said, if there's like a gap, probably this is the best one. But yeah, still like if there is an option to create maybe like a I don't know, but you know what? Like, I think I'll leave it like that for like an yeah. I think like it's good. Like it's okay. Like if you have a gap, probably like this is like a good thing, good start.
Yeah, I agree. I think I personally have never used a functional or skills-based resume, and I very, very rarely recommend that people use these resumes. We're going to talk about combination next, which I think is like a very good middle ground if you want to focus on skills, but still show that you have work experience. And also, thank you. Yes, we will speak a little bit slower.
Yeah,
Thank you so much
I
for
speak
letting us
really
know
fast,
that.
so I apologize for that.
No, I appreciate you
Yeah.
letting us know.
Thank you. Sorry, Keelan, there was like one question that somebody asked how long could be should a resume be? So I answered and I said that it should be like around 1 or 2 pages long, and especially if you're applying, I think 1 page or 2 pages it's perfect because if you like send a resume with 3 or more pages, nobody's gonna read that. Like, unfortunately, that is the truth. So definitely like 1 page or 2 pages should be enough for you to showcase your skills and your experience.
Yeah.
And if you have like if you want to put a job that was like 7, 8 years ago, maybe do not put bullet points. I in my resume have a section where I just say earlier roles and I just put the job title and the company name with the date. So they will know that I have that experience as well, but I don't put any bullet points because it was from 10 years ago, right? Like, so some of the things you might not need like to mention.
Yeah, I love that. I love that suggestion. I love the idea of like an additional roles with just job titles and companies. Um, yeah, I will say that the question of how many pages should a resume be is a controversial question. But I agree with Katerina. I am a 1 to 2 page resume person. I love a 1 page resume whenever possible. But of course, if you've been in the same industry for like over 5 years or you've had multiple roles to put in, a 2 page resume makes sense. But like you said, Katerina, if it's 3, 4 pages, those pages are not going to get looked at.
And I have to say, like, I recently hired somebody that sent like a 4 pages resume. And it was like it was amazing candidate, but like what me and like my team looked at it was like the first 2 pages. I'm not gonna lie. After we were like, okay, good candidate, let's interview. Probably will get to know this person better, like over an interview. So it doesn't mean that all your resume will be just like, like rejected. But sometimes there are still some recruiters and some like hiring managers that they're very like traditional, and if they see like a resume like that is like 5 pages long, they might be like, no, like I will look like in like another resume. So that's something just to consider.
Yeah.
We have like a few more questions.
Okay.
How many years of experience is better to include in the resume?
Yeah, so I think it depends on, again, what industry you have experience in and what industry you're going into. So if you're making a career change, let's go back to Jane, for example, Jane's customer service example resume. If Jane was trying to make a career transition into finance, it wouldn't make sense for her to include like 10 years of customer service experience on her resume, because at a certain point, it's not super relevant. So you want to focus more on those transferable skills. That being said, if Jane continued in the customer service field, it probably would make sense to show all of her work experience. I usually say a good ballpark is like 10 years. What do you think, Katarina?
Yeah, I think that should be fine. And what I would do is like probably will focus on the last two jobs because things change. Every year there are new trends. Sometimes even for myself as a nature, the things that I did like 7 years ago when I started my career, like I'm not doing those things anymore because like the role has evolved like so much and there are new things introduced to the market every day, right? So just like remember probably your last two jobs are the most important. And if you've been like in a job for like 7 years, like you would definitely have to put that job on your resume. But if you change companies, definitely just focus on your last 2 to 3 jobs. And the rest you can just, like I said, like just like add a section that says earlier roles and include those. So they know that you have, like an experience, like 10 years of experience. And especially if you're applying for like a very high role, right? Like more senior role. They would love to know that you have, let's say, 10 years of experience, the example that we use.
Perfect. We've got a question about Tony, who had a career break of 7 years and did freelance. I think maybe the next format that we're going to talk about, the combination, might be a good fit for you. And yes, this recording will be sent out to you probably tomorrow afternoon. It takes some time for Zoom to like process the recording, and then we have to upload it onto YouTube and then email it out. But you will get it at least by the end of the day tomorrow for sure. Okay. Milton, I'm gonna hop over to the combination resume format, the final resume format we're gonna look at, and that might help answer your question. But we can come back to it as well once we go through all of the formats. Cool. Okay. So last but not least, we have combination resume, sometimes also called a hybrid resume, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is a combination of the traditional chronological resume as well as the skills-based resume. So you combine the components of them, and in this resume, you highlight your skills as well as your recent work history. So you can see in the example here, we've got the skills section, just like we saw in the functional or skills-based resume. And then we also have the work experience sections, with kind of the best of both worlds. In this resume format, you can see that there is a lot less space for work experience because we have that skills section. So this is where you're not going to include like 10 years of experience, because that would make your resume 3-4 pages probably. So in this case, this person just went back to 2019, so like 5-ish years, and then also left room for that skills section as well. So let's talk about who this is best for. Combination resumes are generally best if you are a recent graduate with some work experience, but not enough work experience to fill an entire resume. So typically, if you have 1 to 3 years of work experience, in our example here, I think they've got a little bit more than that. Oh, no, so 2019, so they've got more than that, but I think it still works. Especially in a role that's very technical like finance, because this lets them talk about things like QuickBooks, Excel, hard skills that hiring manager is going to be looking for. Also very good if you are changing careers or if your work experience is unrelated, just like I think it was Tony that had the question about unrelated work experience. Combination resume is good because then you can show that you do have work experience. You can show that you've been working to avoid that confusion of like, where is this person working? Do they have a job? You show them that, but then you can also use the skills section to show that even though your work experience might be unrelated, you have the skills needed for the job that you're applying for. And again, just because this experience includes specific work dates there is the concern of if you have a lot of gaps in your resume, it's going to show up. But again, I would not make that a deciding factor on the resume you're choosing because it's not a huge deal. Okay, and let's zoom on this one a little bit more. So we've got Priya. She has been an accountant and she's only worked. Oh, I can see why she only has 2 years of experience because this role was totally unrelated. Sorry, I did not catch that before. So you can see that she's been a junior accountant for 2 years since 2021, and she's only worked at one company. So she really only has one accounting role to put on her resume. She doesn't have enough accounting work experience to fill an entire resume chronologically. So that is why combination is a great fit for her. So she can highlight all of her accounting related skills that she probably gained both in school and in the workplace, as well as use that work experience section while still filling an entire resume page. And you can see that this role down here, her shift supervisor role at Shoppers Drug Mart, is not directly related to accounting, but if we take a look at the bullet points, you can see that she's included a lot of transferable skills that are going to be applicable to accounting. So she's talked about how she managed and led a team. She developed strong organizational skills. She demonstrated exceptional time management skills. And those are all things that are going to be relevant for accounting. So it makes sense that she's included that there. And you can see that this section truly is a chronological resume, breaks down skills as well as work experience. I'm a fan of combination resumes. My resume was a combination resume for a very long time. I just recently switched to a traditional chronological resume because I've reached around the 5-year mark in my career. So it makes more sense for me to have a chronological resume at this point. But before this, I always had a combination resume of skills and work experience. Any thoughts, Katarina?
I just wanted to say, I was like thinking just about this, that I have a combination resume. I have on my resume like a very short summary, and then I have a section that I call like summary of qualifications or skill section. And but I just list my skills. Like I don't add like bullet points. For example, I'll just say HRIS, the human resources informational systems, and I'll just add the systems that I have experience with. I'll just put performance management or like attendance, like talent management. So the things that are like important in nature and they're like keywords, because I can even say like full cycle recruitment and I don't have to add anything else, because if I'm applying for an HR job, the hiring manager know what full cycle recruitment means.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I love a combination resume. I think it's fantastic. I like including those skills, especially like you said, that's something that HR managers and hiring managers and recruiters look for. Like they're
Yes.
looking for the skills, and a combination resume makes that very easy for them to find.
Absolutely. And I also have my current experience on the first page. So my first page, it's summary, skills, and the current experience. And then second page, it's my previous job. And then just like a section that says earlier roles, all of my other positions. And then I have education and also certifications. Let's not forget about those.
Yes.
Clinical certifications, those are important. I think you should include them on your resume. But I think, yeah, like that's something that I think might work. But again, like I know that we cover 3 different types of resumes, but everybody has a different experience. So this is not something that you should stick to. Be like, oh my goodness, these are the 3 things, and then I have to do this. No, like pick something that works for you. You know what you have done in the past. You know what jobs you've like taken and what skills, like you gain from those jobs. Showcase that on your resume. Because believe me, there is no like right or wrong, especially when it comes to resumes. If I see that the applicant has the experience, I have interviewed somebody that even the resume template, like how it looked, it wasn't that good. But I'm like, this person has the skills. Like I really want to like meet them and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And resumes are so subjective. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
if I wrote what I thought was the perfect resume, I'm sure that you would find something about it that you didn't necessarily agree with, and like vice
Absolutely.
versa.
Yes, and as an international student, I remember when I was, like in school and looking for a co-op, and I remember when I graduated and I was looking for a job, I paid so like I don't know, like I attended every single workshop that I could find, and I was like really focusing on everything that they were saying. But in the end, I realized like this is like great advice, but probably I'm gonna tailor according to like my skills and my experience. So there is not like right or wrong. Like what you're doing here is like giving you tools and resources for you to use it and like tailor it to your resume, like based on what you want to, like tell. Like you should tell your story to the hiring manager.
Absolutely. All right.
We
So
have some questions.
got some questions before we hop into our game. Perfect.
So, okay. So I know that we answered Tony's question about the career break. And then, okay, Milton said the question of how many years of experience is better is related to I have experience in several positions and fields. So what I would say, you're probably now like targeting a job. And I'm gonna say like, like let's go like with like a customer service role because that was the experience that we had. If you're targeting that type of role, I would add the experience that is related to that role. So let's say if you worked somewhere else that you work at the library. Well, actually, that's a really good example, like because customer service is like a really good example. But let's say you're like applying for an accounting role and like you worked at a restaurant, like if that was like 10 years ago, I would not include that because honestly, like working at the restaurant is not going to help you that much, like for you like looking for an accounting role. So I would not include that in the resume, right? I would say include the things that you think will be like the hiring managers will be interested to hear, if that makes sense. So like just include the things that you like. And I see that Milton, you also told and ask another question where you said that you work in like different you worked different jobs and you have I think you said kind of in cleaning positions. So if you're applying for an accounting position, this cleaning position is not gonna do, I'm gonna be honest, like anything. Probably like for me as a manager, if I see this, I'll be like, okay, this person was doing this, like and during this time, but it's not going to be like, oh, okay, like this will help him into getting the accounting role because it's not related. But let's say you're applying for like server or like a bartender, this cleaning job, you're like, okay, yes, like like because there's a lot of cleaning included into this role where you need to make sure that the tables are clean, the restaurant looks clean, right? Like you need to make sure, like you bring all of the plates, like in the kitchen and stuff like that. So all like just like think of what you're applying and the experience that you have, how it's relevant to that type of role. Keelan, do you have anything to add?
No, that was perfect. Nothing to add. We've got another question, how to talk about having a child, taking care of that child and having a 2.5-year job gap, as well as addressing a visa delay of 6 months. I personally don't think 6 months is a big enough gap to have to justify it on a resume. I don't think you need to justify that one at all. For the 2.5-year gap, there's multiple ways that you can address it. If you have not had a job in 2.5 years and you're just now coming back into the workforce, and on your resume, your most recent job is not going to be, there is nothing for the past 2.5 years. Depending on your situation, there's different ways that you can approach this. If you have done any sort of volunteering or studying, you can talk about how you did that in the gap, just to show that, no, I didn't have a paying job, but I went back to school and I studied this, or I was volunteering at this organization. I've also seen people do just like address it flat out and say, in their summary section, for example, for the last 2.5 years, I've been a stay-at-home parent and I'm now re-entering the workforce. I've even seen people include it in their work experience and put like a job title as like stay-at-home mom and like talk about the skills that they've earned by being a stay-at-home parent. So tons of ways to address that. Katarina, I'm sure you've seen some as well.
Yeah, it's like I've seen the last thing that you mentioned, like people like mentioning it as like a work experience, and I love that because it is like you're doing a job. It's not that you're just like sitting at home and do nothing. It's an actual job to take care of your kids. So I've seen that, and I love that. Sometimes I've seen it, like you mentioned, also like in the summary. And some people are including in the cover letter, even though like my company in particular, we don't ask for cover letters. For us, it's just like resume. Some people want to send a cover letter, not long, very short, but just explains like their gap and like what they were doing. And it's really nice because you're like, okay, like we know more about this person now, right? Like it's not, you're not wondering like, oh, why they haven't worked like for quite, like for so long and stuff like that. So don't be, like scared to include like, like this in your resume. Tell them before, because if you don't tell, when you apply, you might not get a chance, you might not get an interview, and you might not be able to share with them, right? Like what you did in, like in those 2.5 years. So it's important to include that. And I honestly, like as an HR manager, I love seeing that as like a, like an experience, like a work experience. It's amazing. And you don't have to add like a bullet points or anything. Just, like stay at home, like mom, or like whatever you want to call it, right? And then you like pick up a great job title. You can do that, and then add, like the year, so they see that in like 2.5 years you were at home, like taking care of your kids.
Amazing. Awesome. We've got, do I need to prepare a resume for every job that I apply to? Theoretically, yes, but that does not mean that you have to write a brand new resume from scratch every time that you're applying for a job. You just have to make those subtle changes, keywords that Katerina has talked about, making sure that the keywords in the job posting are in your resume, just to make sure that the resume is tailored for the role. So when we say that you should be making changes to your resume for every job that you apply to, we do not mean that you have to write your resume brand new from scratch. It's just making those subtle changes, maybe changing one or two of the bullet points to focus on the specific duties of the role. Gosh, we've got so many questions. Maybe we might not get a chance to do our game, but for new grads, do you think a 2-page resume is needed? Some people make it 2, some say 1 is enough. If I think 1 is perfectly fine. By no means do you have to include filler information to make it a 2-page resume. If you're a new grad, I think a 1-page resume makes a lot of sense.
Valerie is asking, adding to a previous question, is better to have any kind of Canadian experience job on your resume than to not have any? Is there a chance to be hired by a Canadian employer if my resume is totally based on foreign work experience? So this is a really good question, because in my previous role, I worked for 2 years with internationally trained HR professionals, and I know that they had like a lot of experience from back home, but not having Canadian experience was one of the obstacles that they were like experiencing here in Canada. So I would say if you don't have any Canadian experience, definitely include your, like experience from back home. And if you're looking for a job and, like you feel like, oh, like I'm not getting interviews, like I'm not getting calls, I can't find a job. Even if you have, a regular job like working at Tim Hortons, or like working at a restaurant, absolutely include that, because that tells the employer that you worked here in Canada, you understand the culture. Even though that should not be like a big barrier, with the right training you would like know what to do, and you will learn the law and what the culture, Canadian culture is. But I think if you have any type of experience here in Canada, absolutely include that in the resume, even though might not be relevant to the job that you're applying. So there are like different, cases, but in this case, include your experience from back home, and then the first experience should be your current experience that you're, like if you have a job here in Canada. Also keep in mind, if you're like studying and you're not having a part-time job, definitely like try to find some volunteering, like roles, because you can include that on your resume, and in that way you're not going to have a gap, and you might be able to find a volunteer role that is similar to the like job that you want to have once you graduate. So that is like really good, because you're going to gain experience, you're networking, you're meeting people, and plus you can include something on your resume.
Amazing. Thank you, Katerina.
Follow.
Totally agree as well. John, I see your question. I think you mean, do you have to include a period at the end of the bullet points in your work experience? This is totally optional. No reputable hiring manager or HR is going to say, oh, this has a period, I'm not going to interview this person, or this doesn't have a period. I'm just going back to the examples. I don't think any of them have have periods, but I don't think it matters. That's not going to be a deal breaker, not something that you have to worry about.
Yeah. But like the resumes that I received, like they don't have period. If that like means something, you know, like I'm again, like Keelan said, not like don't worry about that. But if you're really like worried about like this thing, like don't put like periods in like the bullet points.
I will say though that pick one and stay consistent. So like
Exactly. Yes.
one bullet point, put a period, but that means for all the bullet points you should put
Yes.
a period. Just it
Exactly.
shows attention to detail and consistency. All right, friends, let's play a game. We've got 4 examples. I think we should maybe just do 1 or 2 of them because I also want to hop on to the Devon website and show you some tools for that as well. So let's do this first one. So now that we are resume format experts, you can let us know which template you think is best. And there's not one right or wrong answer for these. There could be different templates that work. Again, resumes are very, very personalized and it changes from person to person, okay? So we've got Alex. Alex has been a nurse for 8 years, but they're now interested in transitioning to a career in software development. And they have been learning coding and taking online courses, and they've developed a few projects to showcase their skills, but they don't yet have a paid job as a software developer. Their only paid work experience is in nursing. So if you were Alex, what resume do you think you would use? And again, not necessarily any right or wrong answers.
So Joey said Alex should use the functional or skill-based format. And then we have functional format.
Okay, lots of functionals. I agree. I think functional would be a great one for Alex. Alex could also use a combination resume to show their nursing experience, to show that they have some work experience. But if we go back, this is very similar to one of the examples that we showed with Miguel, I think, who was a software computer programmer, and they included a project section instead of a work experience section. So Alex might want to do something like that. But yes, I agree. Functional or combination is probably best. Katarina, agree? Awesome.
Yes.
I said there was no right or wrong answers, but I think a traditional chronological resume for Alex would probably be the wrong answer. Okay, let's talk about Pablo, who has been a graphic designer for 10 years. He's steadily progressing from junior to senior roles, and he is now looking to be an art director, and he wants to really highlight his career growth and accomplishments. So what resume format do we think is best for Pablo? Chronological? Chronological? Yes, perfect. I agree. I think chronological would be great for Pablo. Combination might be good as well, similar to Katarina's, where she says she has like the skills section where she just lists her skills. Graphic design has a lot of like computer skills. He might want to include things like Figma, Photoshop, things like that, like hard computer skills. But yeah, combination or chronological, I think would be great for him. So you guys are killing this. Okay, what about Sarah? Sarah took a 3-year gap from her career as a project manager to take care of her children. And now she wants to apply for project management positions again, but she's worried about that gap. She's worried about not having any recent work experience. What do we think for Sarah? Got a combination. We've got a chronological, functional, and combination. Functional. Ooh, this one's got some different answers. Combination. Yeah, I think again, probably combination or even chronological. And she could do what we were talking about before, where she like just lists stay-at-home parent or like mom as a job title, just to address that 3-year gap. And because project management is what her work experience is in, and she's looking for a job in the same field, I think that combination or chronological would both be great. All right, we've got one more. We've got our last one. We've got Chris. Chris completed a bachelor's in environmental engineering, and he has no direct work experience in the field. However, during the program, he worked on several research projects related to sustainable energy. So which resume format do we think that Chris could use? Functional, functional. Yeah, I agree. Chris is probably a good functional or skills-based resume candidate just because he has no work experience to list, so he has to fill it with skills. He could, again, include that project section and talk about his school projects that are related. Or he could, we don't know anything about Chris's work experience, but he could theoretically do a combination resume as well and include some work experience and just make small bullets that are transferable to his role. So again, this game really demonstrates that like there's no one right resume or there's no one right answer. Like typically you can get away with any format. It just depends on like how you write it and what you include in it. So it's really up to you. Resumes are very personalized. Everyone's gonna have different opinions.
Mhm. Can I say something for the new grads? I just like
Absolutely.
realized this. Like I work with a lot of new grads, and if you're like you're graduating soon, I would put the education on top. Just because a lot of companies, when they see that you're a new grad, a lot of companies want to hire new grads. You're fresh out of school, you like have this like theoretical knowledge, you're eager to learn. Like every company loves a new grad, and like they have this entry level role that they can like give it to you because and they can train you. So like they can shape you in the person, like like they want you to. Maybe this is wrong, but like like it's new grads are trainable. They're like sponges. They want to like absorb as much as they can. So I think like just education on top, saying that you're like new grad, it will help you a lot if you're applying for jobs.
No, I agree. It's funny that you mentioned that. My partner actually he's from England, he moved to Canada, and he went back to school and made a career change. And when I was writing his resume, he was a new grad and I put his education right at the top. Again, because he was making a career change as well, I wanted to highlight his relevant education. And it's funny that you say that because the reason he got hired at the job he is in now is because the job he's currently in uses software that was created like 10 years ago and they don't want to change it. And they said, like, we don't want someone coming in here with like 5 years of experience and like changing what we do.
Yeah.
Like, we want you so we can teach you how to use this and you won't come in and change things.
Exactly. And like that's amazing because like my company says the same thing. They're like new grads like listen more. Like when we tell them, and my work is like in healthcare, right? And it's like very important to follow the process in the clinical, like protocol because it might like like be like a lawsuit like if you don't follow that, right? So like this is just like briefly explaining, but like new grads, like they listen, they're fresh out of school, they know the rules, they know like what should be done. So like it's very easy to train them, and they listen, and they're like they don't want to change things. Like of course we're always open to feedback, and it's nice like to bring new fresh perspective, but when you hire like somebody that has like 10 years of experience, they have a way of doing things. And when they come, they might be like, yeah, we have to change everything. So just keep in mind that like if you're a new grad, please put your education on like on top of your resume because it is important. And if you have some experience from back home, that's a plus because you're a new grad studying in Canada, plus you have some experience. So that tells them that like you have some experience, like how it is, like to go to work. You've like have that type of, like you experience that type of culture. So I think like it's a big plus when you're applying for jobs.
Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. I'm going to very, very quickly hop over to the Devon portal to show you that now that you might be thinking what type of resume you want to experiment with, the Devon portal makes it very, very easy and you can experiment and go back and forth. So when you log into the Devon portal, you should get a page like this. What you're going to do is you're going to go to resume tools and you're going to go to resume builder. And then you are going to put in all of your details, typical first name, last name, contact info, go through all the tabs, fill it out. And then when we go to download, you can see that it gives you templates. We've got multiple different templates. We've got the chronological, We've got the skills-based or the functional, and then we've got the combination or hybrid. This one also includes a technical format, which we did not talk about, but that is more for technical specialists. It says prioritizes technical skills. So it's probably very similar to a skills-based. And it's very cool because you might be thinking like, should I use a combination? Should I use a functional? And this lets you put in all of your information once and then download it in different formats. And then you can kind of experiment with what you think is best. So very cool tool, definitely play around with it. And then you can play around with which format you think is best. You can even download every single one of them if you want and see which one that you like the best. All right, so very cool tool, definitely play around with that. And I think we might have time for like one more question, but I want to talk about our upcoming live events. So like I said, Devon has events every single Wednesday. Next week, we've got an expert panel of careers in data science. So I believe we have 2 people who have been working in the data science fields for over 10 years. So we're going to come in and talk about how to enter the data science field. September 13th, we've got a revamping your resume workshop, which is a very cool one. You can actually submit your resume beforehand, and then the workshop is 2 career coaches kind of giving you feedback on your resume. It's anonymous, so we get rid of any identifying information, like we hide your name and your contact information, but we give you feedback on your resume live. So you can build a resume after this and bring it to the September 13th and get feedback on it. September 20th is our Devon Career Cafe, which is just where you have an opportunity to ask coaches questions for an hour. And then September 27th is our immigration Q&A. Very, very cool event. We have an immigration lawyer come in, talk about different trends happening in Canadian immigration right now. And then you have the opportunity to ask her questions as well. So it is almost 8 o'clock. If we have like one final question, go ahead and answer it. But if not, I'm going to launch our quick satisfaction poll. Again, 100% anonymous. I can not tell who answers what. But if you just give us how you felt about tonight's workshop. All right, friends, I hope to see you at another event in the future. Again, you're going to get the recording for this event sometime tomorrow, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.